After Max Verstappen had his second home race in the Netherlands last week, it's now Ferrari's turn with a home race in Monza. But can Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz make the Tifosi proud? Let's find out. What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of F1 Fantasy Pole Position. It is Thursday, August 29th. My name is Ewan. On today's episode, I will be going over a Monza Italian Grand Prix preview and then some final thoughts on team selection. It's been a busy week in F1 with Logan Sargeant getting ousted by Williams. We will touch on that. However, if you want to see my kind of like tribute eulogy to Logan Sargeant as an F1 fantasy asset, check yesterday's episode, green flag, yellow flag, red flag for the Italian Grand Prix, where I do like a couple of minutes on Logan Sargeant, Star Spangled Bannered, up head to toe. So go check that episode out. You wouldn't miss that episode if you were liked the video and subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast. So definitely hit those buttons. Help me out. Let's spread the channel to more F1 fantasy managers out there. But yeah, like I said, today it's going to be a preview and team selection. So let's just get right into it here. This is the fourth episode that I've put out this week. So there's tons of content to consume over the next couple of days before lineups lock. Monza, Autodromo Nazionale Monza, probably butchered that. So sorry to any Italian fans watching. 5.793 kilometers, 53 laps, 11 corners, 2 DRS zones. And the first race here was in 1950, known as the Temple of Speed because of its long straights, as you can see from the track layout here. 2 DRS zones, tons of speed. DRS is going to be a huge factor here, and as well as like straight line speed. So Ferrari and Haas should be doing quite well here. Aston Martin could be tough days for the James Bond club. And then possibly McLaren could have a little bit of a downturn in performance here as well. Just a little bit of a draggier car. However, those latest updates in Zandvoort looked phenomenal. So we'll have to see how they look on Friday and Saturday around the Autodromo here in Monza. Tires for this weekend are C3, C4, C5. For the Baku Grand Prix race preview, I'm going to do a little bit more research into this, see if we can find some trends in the Pirelli data when they kind of tell us what traction, all that kind of stuff. See if we can pick up some patterns there, because for the next 3 races, Monza, Baku, and Singapore, we've got the C3, C4, C5 coming. So it may be useful to know who is good there, what kind of tracks they're good at, all that kind of stuff. So I will definitely be doing more research in there, but expect to see this graphic with different flags for the next couple of races here. Weather, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, warm and cloudy, mostly sunny and cloudy. Friday has some clouds in the afternoon, but 34 degrees, hottest day of the weekend. 33 degrees Celsius on Saturday. 5% chance of rain, possibly in the late afternoon. We'll have to watch out for that. And then Sunday, 32 degrees Celsius, 20% chance of rain anytime in the afternoon as of right now. This is the latest weather forecast from Thursday morning. So it could update, obviously will update over the next couple of days, but just keep an eye on that. But it looks like we're going to get pretty dry running here. So hopefully some representative data on Friday for qualifying and the race from the F1.com data preview that they provide. And hopefully that helps F1 Fantasy Tools, 11FI, FF Trout kind of get their simulations out, and they are a little bit reliable, as they always are. Going over here to the 2023 Italian Grand Prix, Carlos Sainz took pole. It was very surprising. I remember everyone freaking out. He defended as valiantly as possible, but eventually ended up on the podium in 3rd place behind Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez. Yes, Sergio Perez still capable of getting podiums at this time last year before the massive downturn, if anyone remembers that. The top 3 in qualifying were Sainz, Verstappen, and Leclerc. And then the race, it was Verstappen, Perez, Sainz, Leclerc, Russell, Hamilton, Alexander Albon, because Williams traditionally does quite well at this track. So Albon is in my thoughts. Franco Colapinto is also in my thoughts, depending on whenever he comes into the game. I'm expecting Colapinto. You know what? I'm just going to get into that a little bit later when we talk about Colapinto. Norris, Alonso, and Bottas rounded out the top 10. Yes, that is a Sauber in the top 10. Hard to believe with what we are seeing in 2024 that Sauber just 1 year ago could be picking up points. As for today's shirt, it's the 75th anniversary shirt that they released a couple of years ago. Ferrari also released a special kind of outfit, driver suit, hat, t-shirt combo for this race as well. And personally, I love it, but it seems quite divisive in the F1 community. So let me know in the comments below. Do you like the Ferrari suits for this weekend? Do you hate them? I hate the price of the hat, 50 euros. That is redonkulous. It looks phenomenal. I would love to buy it, but I don't think I have like $50 lying around, 50 euros lying around for just a kind of special one-off hat. We will see. However, going over here to the breaking news that we learned this week, that Logan Sargeant is officially out for the remainder of the season. Well, not out. He's been dropped by Williams for the remainder of the 2024 F1 season. He will not be coming back. He remains part of the Williams family, whatever that means, I guess. I guess he's still in their F1 academy, but I would expect him to look for more opportunities back on his side of the pond starting next season. 36 races was not all that hot. I think I covered it yesterday in my tribute. He had 6 races with positive points, 19 races with negative points. Like, just overall, not great job by him. And the crash in Zandvoort really like kind of sealed the deal for him there with that Williams, with all the new upgrades, just getting smashed to pieces. It was kind of writing on the wall there. Even James Bowles couldn't continue to support Logan Sargeant as much as he had. So he is bringing in Franco Colapinto. We do not know his price right now. I'm expecting that we will find out a lot more about Colapinto and his F1 fantasy price later today, early tomorrow. I'm just kind of thinking that it's media day today, so they're going to take his pictures, his headshots, kind of get that in the game, and just post that on f1.com, f1fantasy.com, all that stuff. And then like eventually he will be active before free practice 1 tomorrow. So just keep an eye on that. A lot of us content creators, F1 fantasy community, kind of people talking online, are expecting him to come in at Sargeant's price. He's a very similar prospect to Sargeant. He's young, 21 years old, from Argentina. Right now he's 6th in the F2 championship. He's got 1 win, 2 second place finishes, gets 9 races to kind of show what he can do. He did run FP1 at Silverstone earlier this year. He was about half a second off Alexander Albon in the same Williams there. So not expecting a ton, but I was at like Monday morning, I was pretty much set on just getting Sargeant into my lineup and taking the price falls as they come. At this point, 4.8, he would be down to 4.0 in 4 races time if he had stayed at Williams. And I'm pretty sure that that is as low as this fantasy game can go, because that's where he was at last year. He was just kind of holding at 0 for a long time. If you go on F1 fantasy tools, you can see price changes from 2023. He just had 0 there for a really long time. So pretty much as low as he could go in F1 fantasy. So even if Colapinto comes around, just trundles around the back, does like his best kind of like Joe Guan Yu impression, maybe finishes 19th instead of 20th a couple of weeks, he will be all right. Just try not to crash the car. The first time since 2001 that an Argentinian will be on the grid for F1. So great job by Argentina to get back on the grid. Welcome back. And yeah, that is the only US driver is now off the grid. So it'll be interesting to see if there is a slight internal push from Formula One to maybe get an American back on the grid, considering there are 3 races on the calendar right now. There's rumored to be a 4th coming in the next couple of years, looking at you, Chicago. So we will see how that goes down. Getting away from the breaking news and kind of going into some more of the stats. I did some of these tables last week, and I changed it up for this week. So I did the rolling points average for drivers and constructors. I picked the top 4 drivers because the graphic just starts to get a little bit busy after 4 drivers. So pretty much I took the average from races 1 through 3, 4 through 6, 7 through 9, 10 through 12, 13 through 15. If you are a baseball fan, you'll know this is like kind of like the rolling WOBA, rolling average kind of thing. They do 30, 50, 100 game sample sizes, just kind of see where the trends are lying. So as you can see here, Ferrari started off strong with Charles Leclerc, 32.3 points, then 32.6 points through the first 6 races, but has had a little bit of a dip in form here, 17.6 in the middle 3 races, 12 in the next three. And now he's back up to 22.6, still the lowest among the top four highest scoring drivers on the season. That's where, or the top four drivers in the top four teams here, because Oscar Piastri and Carlos Sainz are actually leading Lewis Hamilton right now. But just wanted to get a little bit of a perspective where we're at, because these are the top four highest or most expensive assets in the game on the driver side as well. So as you can see here, Lando Norris has kind of just been climbing the entire season. 15.6, 26.6, 32, 30, and then 33.6 in the last three races, outscoring Max Verstappen in two of the last three kind of iterations of this graph here. He only trailed him by 0.6 points in races 10 through 12, but just kind of illustrating, like, Max was super strong at the beginning. Races 1 through 3 are only that low because he had that DNF in Australia, but 48.3. Then it started to take a dip with Monaco, and it's just kind of been steadied out here in the 30 to 27 point range over the last six races. So he's the most expensive asset, but he's getting outscored by Hamilton and by Norris. So those two are definitely ahead of him in the rankings for, like, who would you want to lead your team in F1 fantasy. Hamilton, 33 points per race in races 10 through 12, and then 31 over the last three as well. Despite a bad qualifying on Saturday, he still came through with a ton of overtakes and a ton of positions gained on Sunday and Zandvoort. So we'll see if Mercedes can bring that into Monza. From what I've been reading, Mercedes may struggle here, just the kind of characteristics of the car, whereas McLaren and Red Bull should be pretty strong. Red Bull maybe has the slight edge just based on their, like, DRS efficiency, but Ferrari, I read last night, and it was some, like, kind of obviously pro Ferrari blog, but they said that they had just put a brand new engine in Charles Leclerc's car for Zandvoort, and they're going to do the same thing for Carlos Sainz and Monza. So it really sounds like Ferrari is just throwing everything at the wall to try and get the Ferrari guys on the podium, possibly a win. A win sounds pretty outlandish right now with just Verstappen and Norris, Piastri kind of all up there. But I would expect one Ferrari on the podium come Sunday afternoon, especially with just them throwing everything at it to try and get a red car driver on the podium in Italy. Would be fantastic. Moving over here to the constructors, and this kind of tells more of a story than the driver's one, I will admit. As you can see, Ferrari super strong in the first six races of the season, 74.3, 70.6 over the first six races there. But McLaren here, they have just been steadily rising throughout the season, and now they are just storming away with the constructors title, I guess you would call it, in F1 fantasy. 43.6, 45.6, then I think that's 59. Then it's going to be just maybe like 61 or 60.3 here in races 10 through 12, and then 74 points per race over the last three races for McLaren, which is 19 points ahead of Red Bull, 21 points ahead of Ferrari, and 33.4 points ahead of Mercedes. Mercedes there, obviously affected by George Russell's kind of up and down form. Not a good Sunday in the Netherlands, and then a disqualification and a DNF in two of the three races before that, also kind of affecting Mercedes. So they could be on a similar trajectory to McLaren here, which is why you don't have to rush out and get away from Mercedes this weekend before Monza. However, it feels like the drumbeat is slowly building for Ferrari to get back into our thoughts. And when I get into team selection here in just a little bit, there is a build where I have double Ferrari in my T1 team in two moves, and it doesn't feel bad. It's just kind of like, do I want to go all in? Like, these next three tracks are so different. Monza, Baku, Singapore. It's going to be really interesting to see how fantasy managers adjust to the kind of twists and turns of the F1 season as we enter the final 9 races here. The thing I should touch on is Red Bull's form. So 70.3 over the first 3 races. And then they were literally off the graphic here. I think it was 108.3. I guess the data point didn't want to be on there. 31.3 in the next 3 races, 64.6, which led all 4 of these constructors over the next from races 10 to 12, and now they're down to 55 over the last 3 races as well, just ahead of Ferrari and 14 points ahead of Mercedes. So kind of like the same thing with Max for our Red Bull, most expensive asset, but really just isn't providing like a bang for your buck. Like I would rather have Ferrari than Red Bull right now. The consistency of the drivers, definitely would rather have McLaren as well. I don't think that's breaking any hot takes or anything like that in the F1 fantasy world, but that is where I'm at right now. So if I was ranking them right now, I would go Mercedes, or I would go McLaren, Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull. However, there is a part of me that just wants to give in to the romantic side of F1 and sport in general and kind of get Ferrari in for this weekend. But let's just go check all that out in team selection. All right, so here we are with the T1 squad ahead of the Italian Grand Prix in Monza. 2 days, 8 hours, and 30 minutes to go. No live stream from me this week, so definitely check out F1, the fantasy formula. Check out if Rain's doing a stream. I think Zach F1 is doing a stream on Friday night after FP2 as well. So definitely great, a bunch of great F1 fantasy content creators to watch before the deadline this week. I will probably be sneaking in a little look on my iPhone while I am walking around Berlin before lineup lock as well. So this is a squad right here. Went with George Russell in the DRS boost last week. Did not go according to plan. Oscar Piastri, Valtteri Bottas, Pierre Gasly, Alexander Albon, Mercedes, and McLaren. That's the team I wildcarded into. I used that last week. So I've got 3 chips remaining in the final 9 races of the season. And there's a couple of options I'm thinking about here. The easiest option, the most sensible option, the option that I'm expecting to kind of top the simulations this week is Lando Norris in, and then bringing in Logan Sargeant, and slash Franco Colapinto for 4.8. As long as Franco Colapinto comes in at 5.1 million or less, this strategy is a-okay. I double up our McLaren, I double up on Mercedes, and then I've got 2 Williams assets who should do pretty well around Monza, and then Pierre Gasly, a former winner around Monza as well. I kind of went with Gasly over Hulkenberg last week because in 2023, Gasly finished on the podium there for Alpine. I was like, he obviously likes the track. Let's just go with that. And I think they ended up on the same point. So, and they both had a 0.5 increase. So kind of leaning into the previous track history is something that I'm interested in there. However, if I don't want to do that, Logan Sargeant. So I guess I should talk about what's going to happen with Logan Sargeant. I would expect that if you have Logan Sargeant in your F1 fantasy team, that in order to make any other transfers, you will have to bring him out, because I'm expecting them to be like, you can't have an inactive asset in the game. Like, no, can't do that. However, if you have him in your team and you don't want to make any transfers this week, I don't think the game can stop you. You'll take a 0. You won't gain. You won't lose any budget. I'm not sure if anyone did that. I would probably have to go back in time and look at what happened in Saudi Arabia, if there were any teams that had Carlos Sainz as like an inactive asset. But I think those teams would still be allowed to play. I don't think they zeroed out their score for the week. Just something to consider there. So that is kind of what would happen with Logan Sargeant. That's what I'm expecting to happen with Logan Sargeant. We'll see what happens over the next 24 hours. I expect that to kind of be fixed and changed in the game. But yeah, I would expect them to be like, okay, if you want to keep him in, you just can't make any other moves. It's kind of like if anyone plays Fantasy Premier League, sometime like this just happened with Dominic Solanke. He got transferred to Spurs. If you had him in your team before the game changed him over to Spurs, you could keep 4 Spurs players despite there only being a limit on 3 players per team in FPL. However, as soon as you want to make a transfer, they're like, no, your team is illegal. You got to make a move to change this and make it a legal team. So that's what I'm expecting with Logan Sargeant. The second strategy that I'm thinking for my T1 team here is keep Valtteri Bottas, which kind of makes me want to throw up a little bit, but also bring in Ferrari as an upgrade for Mercedes, an upgrade, I guess, or would be depending on the data. And then I can also get Carlos Sainz. So if Ferrari's looking super strong, I can get to double Ferrari in 2 moves. Would I give Carlos Sainz or George Russell the extra DRS, it'd probably be Carlos Sainz, especially if Ferrari's looking strong and if they've convinced me enough to bring in 2 assets. That's where I would go with the extra DRS boost. I'd expect Ferrari to want for both drivers to want to do well. Uh, Probably favor Leclerc since he's going to be there next season. However, Sainz got pole last year in Monza, so I mean he's obviously got the pedigree and the track record to kind of back it up here. So if this was the build I was going with, I don't really love going with Bottas, obviously. Sainz could be in line for a huge boost. Any Ferrari asset could be in for a huge boost this weekend if the data backs it up. So kind of, I could go with a steady Eddie Lando, like high ceiling, high floor kind of pick, or the kind of risk it for the biscuit double Ferrari build here. It still gives me access to 3 of the top 4 teams. I got McLaren, Ferrari, and a little bit of Mercedes here with George. So it's not the worst thing in the world. But this team has 120.3 in its cost cap budget. It's outside the top 8K in the world after a pretty rough weekend in Netherlands. So now I'm going to talk about my other T3 team that is top 1,000 in the world with a way bigger budget. So here is the T3 team, top 1,000 in the world team, 128.1 million cost cap team or whatever's going on there. So Hamilton, Piastri, Hulkenberg, Gasly, and Albon here with Mercedes and McLaren. And I've got 2 million in the bank with this team, which leaves me agonizingly 0.1 short of going straight from Hamilton to Lando. So that is a little bit of a bummer. However, it's not the end of the world. I could kind of change things up a little bit here. I mean, obviously, I could downgrade any one of these assets or Hulkenberg or Gasly to whatever price Colapinto comes in at, and that gives me more than enough money to get to Lando. I could do that, but I'd have to kind of do a double move here. I'm not sure if I'm ready to kind of triple up on McLaren. I know people were asking in the comments in yesterday's video about my thoughts on that. Oscar did put a little bit of a doubt in my mind with that Sunday performance. I'm not entirely sure what was going on there. Lando looked so strong. I kind of expected Oscar to just breeze past Charles Leclerc, and it did not happen. So that was kind of interesting. I'm wondering if like he had got past Leclerc pretty early, if he could have even caught Max. But it's all catching and passing, totally different things in F1. So that would have been something to kind of, it would be interesting to see how that could have gone down there. So Piastri puts a little bit of a doubt in my mind there. He does cost the same as Charles Leclerc right now. So I could just do a straight swap here, roll a transfer into Baku and let it be done. If I kind of like the look of Charles, if I'm not super stoked about Carlos Sainz or Ferrari in general, that is an option as well. If I am, I can always double up on Ferrari and go with McLaren, Constructors, Ferrari, and then Hamilton and Leclerc. I would really love to get Lando in. So if that was the option there, I could also just get Hamilton to Norris here and kind of just switch the drivers a little bit. So I'd go from, I would consider him the T1 driver in Mercedes for Hamilton, but I could also get down here to Sainz or Russell and kind of go with this route as well. It gives me Mercedes as the constructor, Sainz as the driver, McLaren and Norris is really, really strong combo here. And kind of having, once again, coverage of 3 of the top 4 teams in F1 fantasy. I'm not super, like, we'll see how this goes. This doesn't feel right to me for some reason. I'd maybe rather, I think I can also go with like a Mercedes Ferrari route, which not having McLaren as a constructor also feels quite bad. But then like Charles and Oscar, Charles and Lewis, or Charles or Lewis or Oscar are all in play there as well, along with Lando. Just kind of, it kind of comes down to like what the drivers will be looking at. That's kind of where I'm at with the constructors. I think if I'm doing something like this, I'll definitely want to keep McLaren. We showed it on the graph earlier that is the strongest team. So Lando, Ferrari, keep McLaren there. That gives me 22.9 million, which is right where Carlos Sainz is. George Russell is a little bit of an option as well, but yeah, doubling up on McLaren Ferrari could be another option as well. Nico Hulkenberg, Pierre Gasly, Alexander Albon. I feel really good about all three of those assets. Like I said, Pierre's got a win here. Williams is always traditionally strong here, and Haas should be pretty good around this track as well. So just kind of mixing up the premium assets with this T3 team here, which is a great position to be in. And yeah, in general, not a bad option at all. If you have a little bit more budget than me, I know it's not a sprint weekend, but if there's like a clear divide between like McLaren and Ferrari, just say the data looks incredibly strong, and you could get Lando and Charles into your lineup for Sunday, it's maybe a time to hit that extra DRS boost. I know we want to save these chips for sprints, but sometimes, like last year, was it last year? It was this time last year going into Monza. The data was so overwhelming for Red Bull and Ferrari to be the top two teams that a lot of people used their limitless chip. And it wasn't in a sprint weekend, and it worked out phenomenally for them because a lot of people, like myself, saved that limitless chip for Coda. And Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton got disqualified after the race. And yeah, it's just that's kind of the way things shake out. So with our budgets getting a little bit bigger here, especially this team that I've got here, if you have one of those bigger budget teams, you may want to think about the extra DRS boost this weekend. Lando and Charles, or Lando and Lewis, would be the ideal combo. I wouldn't be taking hits to play that chip. That kind of defeats the purpose of playing the chip. I mean, 10 points is 10 points, but you'd love to just kind of get there in enough moves. So there's a lot of combinations for this team. Could just roll one transfer, go use both transfers and kind of get these assets in, or just, yeah, kind of go all out and just get coverage for three of the top four teams. One last reminder for the lineup lock here on Saturday, August 31st, 4 p.m. local time, 3 p.m. UK time, 10 a.m. Eastern on the Eastern on the US East Coast. That's what that would stand for there. But yeah, it's the second race of a doubleheader. Then we've got a week off, and then it's Baku, then Singapore, and then we've got a weird month off. But there'll be some F1 fantasy content coming out there, as I'm not going to the Olympics this time. So I will actually be able to create some content while the season is in a tiny bit of a lull before the madness of triple headers comes to our doors to end the season. But good luck this race week in Monza. There's lots of questions going on. You can follow me on X at F1U and FPL. I will be on a 6-hour train ride from or to Berlin on Saturday. So I'll be happily tweeting away, going with any of the news, any of the data, just kind of streaming my thoughts out of my brain onto my Twitter feed. So definitely follow me on there. And then, yeah, just make sure to follow all the other F1 fantasy content creators when they are going live on Saturday, as they always do a great job. But like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Rate it 5 stars wherever you're listening on the podcast side. Appreciate any support. Always trying to grow the channel. But once again, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And I will talk to you next time.